I'm talking to a man who does not need any introduction. And normally that's often said regarding people and then to people who do need an introduction. He doesn't. Dr. Jerome Corsi, welcome back again, my friend.
Lionel, it's great to be back with you. Thank you.
You have redefined prolific. Every time I'm getting notified constantly of new videos that you've done. Your YouTube program, your YouTube channel is just burgeoning. Congratulations. Spreading the good word, spreading truth. Tip of the spear, my friend. Tip o' the spear.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, Lionel. Thank you very much. And there's so much here to get out. It's hard to rest thinking how much information we need to share and the conversations we need to have. This YouTube has been a great tool. I've been working with the Discord group over at Calm Before the Storm at CBTS_stream, and I've been live streaming with them almost every day.
And in the middle of the night sometimes. I get up very early and you're there. Especially
with QAnon posts. I mean, I get instant messages and I get up and do the get on the board and start decoding with the CBTS group.
Let's go to Q. What's the latest with him or them? And you also hear some of the typical discordant view, like, oh, he's a sellout. Oh, he had to change his site, and But tell us, is Q still valid, still pertinent? What's going on?
Yeah, there's been a great deal of validation in terms of changing the site. The moderators and the 8chan know it's the original and same Q. That's all been validated by IP address and the devices he's using. I'm confident this is a real military intelligence source. It feels right. The information is really accurate. Not always exactly happening the way Q expects it to, but then that's military intelligence. It doesn't always come out or end up exactly the way you're thinking, but the intelligence we're getting is quite good, and putting the pieces together is quite helpful. So I'm completely confident that Q is a real person working with a group in military intelligence, and I'm pretty sure I could identify the person. I've gone that far in researching it and figuring it out, but we're not going to reveal anything. It's going to stay completely secret, and it's going to stay completely the way it is now, which is kind of like a deep throat source, sharing intelligence with the public, really for the first time I can think of in American history.
Right.
In a way that, during Watergate was shared by deep throat sources in the government with, the reporters reporting on Watergate, Bernstein, Woodward, and others. But this is being, Q intelligence is being shared with the American public as a whole. And my role has been to try to make it more comprehensible, to translate it, to bring it to a wider audience.
Has Q been in contact with you without going into detail?
No, and I'm not encouraging it.
Okay.
Q has said no direct communications. I don't really want any direct communications. I'm not seeking it.
Good.
I'd much rather keep it the way it is, and
Good.
that is that, this is not about me, Lionel. It's about the really literally millions of anonymous out there who Q refers to as forming the army that are going to be responsible for bringing about this great awakening. I think really a second American Revolution. And so I feel privileged to be able to assist and to be able to help to bring it to a larger audience, but I don't want to make myself center stage on this.
And also,
Q is.
It's also, plausible deniability. You don't want to be subpoenaed and this and that. And plus, to show you, and this goes to show you your bona fides and your gravitas and your background, the very fact that you've devoted any amount of time to this, with all the work that you have been a part of in your very productive and fecund life, the very fact that you're even acknowledging Q, to me, says and means volumes. So that being said, what's the latest?
Well, it was very interesting on Friday, when Mueller announced these 13 indictments against these Russians. And I want to come back to this because I think they're the most pathetic indictment. I mean, if this is all we have Russian collusion is 13 trolls, in Russia who posted on Facebook and others social media. I mean, we're a country with 350 million people. There must have been 60, 70 million people following the election every day who were posting. You get, 13 Russians from Russia, and many of these posts occurred after the election. Many were both for Hillary and for Trump. I mean, it's pathetic. If that's all Mueller's got, Mueller ought to resign in embarrassment.
Let's bring people up to speed. He's got count them, four. I don't know how many millions of dollars he and others have collectively spent, but you've got 4 total indictments. You've got Manafort and Gates, and that antedates Trump. That was Ukrainian stuff, or whether it was bank or acknowledging monies or whatever it was, but that's PT or pre-Trump. Then you've got General Flynn and Papadopoulos, both of them who pled guilty to lying to the federal government, lying to FBI. And with General Flynn, he, in addition, lied to Vice President Pence, which caused his immediate ouster. So, get this, Dr. Corsi, Mueller's main witnesses are 2 convicted liars. So imagine this cross-examination. State your name for the record. General Flynn. General Flynn, you lied to Vice President Pence. Yes, I did. And you were fired. Yes. And then you lied to the FBI. Yes. And you pled guilty. Yes. But you're telling the truth now. Yes. You're witness. That's it. So anyway, somebody's telling him, and I don't want to go into Florida per se, but I will say this. When people are saying, where the hell was the FBI? Where the hell was the FBI? You've got a guy saying, I'm going to shoot people. I'm going to shoot. Here I am. Here I am. You're worrying about Russian mythical prostitutes soiling the percales of some whatever. And so Mueller had to say, do the 13 on a Friday. And it read as a narrative. I've read many an indictment, and it looks sometimes filled with sections and case law. This was like a narrative. Once upon a time, there was, and I'm reading, I'm thinking, this is an indictment? This sounds like and also, and I'm throwing about 9 things at you, which is as I'm wanting to do. Plus, I'm very ill on Theraflu, which I think is affecting me. But there's this thing that interests me as well. If you took most of what was alleged in that indictment, Dr. Corsi, and an American had done it, it wouldn't be illegal. Having a false site. I know people with false Twitter accounts, false names, false followers, sowing discord, encouraging minority non-involvement. Dr. Cornel West, Minister Farrakhan was telling African Americans, Hillary's not for you, stay home. Everything that these Russians were doing, and I'm doing a lot of these, air quotes, everything that they were alleged to have done with exception to foreign registry and the like, this is something that if I did, it wouldn't be illegal.
In fact, the only thing that the Russians did that was illegal was not to register.
Yeah.
They had registered, they could have done everything they were doing. I mean, and the point is that the 2 sentences, I think there were there were several when Rosenstein read these indictments. He said,
unwitting.
He said, there's no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There's no allegation in the indictment that the Russians changed the outcome of the 2016 election.
Well,
so and he said also there was no indication that anyone from the Trump campaign or Trump wittingly worked with these Russians. They may have encountered some of them, but it was not a plan. So what's the point of the indictment?
Right.
And meanwhile, you've got, Barack Obama, who sent a whole crew of operatives over to Israel to try to make sure Netanyahu would lose the last election.
And Scotland, Brexit, and also Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, Obama flies over to Great Britain and lectures the Great Britons on staying in the EU. I mean, isn't that interfering in an election? I mean, this is, the whole thing is so pathetically absurd that it makes a laughingstock, a joke out of Mueller and his whole enterprise.
One of the questions I was, in fact, many people are suggesting is that with this indictment, using this framework, could the same theory be applied to Christopher Steele, to Perkins Coie, to Fusion GPS, to Hillary Clinton, to that, say, trying to affect, sow discord and the like? Is anybody suggesting that we take the template of this indictment, just change the names, throw in Mr. Steele as well? I don't know if he signed up as a foreign agent.
Well, and that's the whole point. We've already got the letter from Grassley and from Graham, Senators Grassley and Graham, requesting a prosecution of Steele. Well, Steele was a foreign agent interfering in the election, and Hillary paid for it. Does that implicate Hillary in the crime? So did the DNC. How about Perkins and Coie? They were the ones who did the laundered payment to Fusion GPS, who hired Christopher Steele, and Sid Blumenthal, wherever he was in the world, yet another deep, dark operative, dirty
Eric
trickster.
Schmidt from Google, Alphabet, who resigned immediately. It's like that.
It's ridiculous. I mean, the whole thing is pathetic. And then what QAnon dropped on Friday, which I thought was really important, and we had all, I think, forgotten about it, but the Department of Homeland Security was conducting, in fact, I have its announcement. Yes, it was the announcement on February 15th, that on the 16th, which was Friday, and the 18th, which I guess is going to be Sunday or Monday. I mean, let's see, today is the 17th. The 18th will be Monday. The officer of the Director of National
19th
Intelligence.
is Monday.
What they've done is the Director of National Intelligence, together with Homeland Security, which took over the voting fraud operation examination when President Trump canceled it because the Democrats would not cooperate with the Presidential Commission. They're conducting classified briefings now with the state election officials. And what Q dropped on Friday, as the Mueller announcement was percolating, was that evidently a clip or a statement out of what the DHS has found, and the Director of National Intelligence, that it says, this is shocking. I mean, listen to this, that independent of the Russian investigation, which really amounted to nothing, on numerous occasions, agents, U.S. and other foreign agents, as described within DHS such and such, blocked out, acting outside of Russian agents. So U.S. and other foreign entities acting outside Russian agents did attempt on numerous occasions and were successful in interfering with the presidential election of 2016. Senate elections of 3 named senators, ex-elections blocked out, whereby several million of illegal non-resident ballots, the irregularities, were counted, while legal ballots were improperly tabulated and or intentionally mishandled. We believe these actions were a coordinated attack against the democracy of our country. The Department of Homeland Security will be submitting a final report to the White House, Department of Justice, other state and local agencies outlining our findings as early as March, date blocked out, 2018. Well, this report encompasses only a sampling of 22 counties across the country. It strongly suggests, based on the evidence provided, that a mandated countrywide investigation be begun under, and here the U.S. Code is referred to, as set forth in Section 7 of the final report. This is the shocking news. Mueller is, when this news hits, which it will sometime in March, it's going to fundamentally change the entire dynamic, because what we're going to have here is proof of massive Democratic Party fraud to steal the election, including steal. Well, millions of illegals voting, millions of illegals voting, and legitimately casted ballots. I mean, listen to this: legitimately casted ballots, improperly tabulated, and/or intentionally mishandled. These actions were a coordinated attack against the democracy of our country. I mean, compare that to 13 loony Russian agents posting on Facebook. You know? And what's Mueller spent all of his time doing? What are the Democrats, the mainstream media, spent all their time harping on? Why isn't the Department of Justice investigating this voter fraud? Because, of course, it's a politicized, weaponized Department of Justice that only defends Democrats and attacks Republicans. That's the problem.
And you also have these individuals, just for the sake of, normally when you are to impanel, I mean, imagine being those grand jurors and somebody says, oh, by the way, this information that we're doing, this true bill that you've just signed, none of these people can be extradited. None of these people will ever see justice. None of these people, you don't even know who they are. I like the way in the indictment they had their name in Russian. They had which was just to add legitimacy to this. So you have actual voter fraud that didn't just sow discord, that didn't just provide through Laude, a fake Facebook account. Oh my God. But actual voter fraud, which, by the way, is the momentum and the motivation for all of this DACA, DAPA, CACA, whatever the heck it is.
Right.
It's nobody's saying anything about this.
Well, I see, this is the key. That what QAnon was pointing out on Friday was compared to the absolutely silly indictment of 13 Russians. You have massive evidence coming forward from the Department of Homeland Security and the Director of National Intelligence that the Democrats engaged in massive voter fraud, such that we're not going to be able any longer to trust, no voter IDs, and why the Democrats want open borders, why they want DACA, why they want to flood the country. The African Americans aren't enough for the Democrats anymore. They want to import an army of illegal immigrants to vote for them. That's the point. And destroying ballots. I mean, realize that Hillary Clinton lost an election that not only was rigged for her,
yeah, right,
but also had 13 loony Russians. Who knows what they were doing? It reminds me of a Peter Sellers movie.
Right. I mean, well, when you saw Rosenstein, when you saw him Friday, did he ever think to himself, "My God, has it come to this? This is not what I had anticipated." I'm reading. I mean, how did they, when he walked by, did they give him a high five? What was that? And yet, when you watch the mainstream corporate media, deep state media, respond, they ran with it as though, again, buying a Facebook ad or something or Twitter is going to change something. So, Dr. Corsi, what does Q suggest? What is Q's battle cry? What do we do? What are the directives?
Well, I mean, hold on a second. I'm just going to try to. I got a little little static online. I was trying to get rid of it. Do you hear it, or I
no,
think
not
it's
at all.
Okay.
Sound great.
Look, the point I think is this. I was going to say, first of all, do you remember the movie Peter Sellers did when Russia invaded America? What was that called? That came in a submarine. Do you remember that movie? It was a 1950s or 60s movie. This Russian group lands in New York
This isn't
City.
The Russians are coming. The Russians
are coming.
Yeah,
the
right,
Russians are coming.
Right.
Okay, they land with a submarine. They come from a little European principality, and they come to surrender so that we will put them on foreign aid. That's what Mueller's indictment reminded me of. It was like a Peter Sellers movie. It was so ridiculous. But the serious nature of this is if the Democrats are trying to steal elections with voter fraud, illegal immigrants coming in and voting, the ripping up of ballots, destruction of ballots, Hillary probably didn't win the popular vote. She didn't win anything. I think it means that Trump had an overwhelming victory. And there's 3 Senate seats that were affected by voter fraud. What do? Do we hold those Senate elections over again? I mean, this is,
And her only claim to fame is that, well, we should get rid of the Electoral College because, after all, I won the popular vote. Not so fast, Mrs.
Right.
C. Not so fast. And stopping right now there's nobody who says, excuse me, do you understand why maybe this notion about identification? Because I'll never forget when they said, you're asking people to produce an ID? How? I mean, just to vote? I mean, yes. They can't do this. These people, these mamacitas or these people, they don't understand your weird ways of identification. You can't even open up a check cashing at the A&P without somebody. So there's no backwards reference to this to remind people this is what we've been talking about. It's not racist.
Well, the whole thing is, the point is the Democrats have moved so far to the left, so far to the hard left, they become a socialist or communist party, European style. And they don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in the rules. They don't believe in the laws. Where they politicized Obama and Hillary in a coup d'etat, really, trying to invalidate the legitimate results of the 2016 election, tried to deny Donald Trump the presidency with this Russian collusion, which has resulted in absolutely zipola, nothing, except for these 13 loony Russians tried to interfere on the internet. I mean, you read the indictment. I mean, this indictment is so pathetic. The Concord organization, one of the ones they indict, founded a project called Project Lakata, which had multiple elements to it. Well, these multiple elements, as you go through it, have to do with, maybe $1,200,050, which they use to post under different names in the internet chat rooms or Facebook or, Twitter, Google. I mean, it's ridiculous. Hillary spent like well over $1 billion, $1 billion. And we're worried about 1 million or 2 million or 3 million that Russia spent when we interfere in elections all over the world. What about going back to 1954 in Iran when we
Operation Ajax?
We overthrew Mossadegh.
Kermit Roosevelt, Mossadegh. Oh yeah, and Arbenz and whatever. Reading some of these. This is a great advertising gimmick or message for Facebook and Twitter. It's like, how important are we? When the Russians decided to thwart and change the election, what did they do? Did they break into a election booth? No. Did they change the numbers? No. Did they hack election precincts and supervisor of elections off? No. What did they do? They bought Facebook ads. But there was one, for example. In fact, the indictment says that they allegedly stole the identities of real Americans to post on social media accounts, using the accounts, quote, to reach significant numbers of Americans in order to interfere with the American political system and presidential election. It's not interfering. It's just the dissemination of ideas and thoughts, which, by the way, were heralded or agreed to and followed and retweeted by others. In fact, there was this @10_GOP, one of the accounts, falsely claimed to be controlled by the Tennessee Republican Party, and the account drew more than 100,000 followers. Okay.
I mean, this is, the point is it's so pathetic. It's so small, and compared to what we now have released from Q in terms of what's coming in this Department of Homeland Security voter fraud study, that I think the voter fraud study is going to result in a massive revamping of our voter system. We're going to have to basically have voter ID laws. I think we've got to get rid of these electronic voting machines, which can be easily rigged.
Yep.
We're going to have to go back to paper ballots. We're going to have to essentially get monitors in the entire election process. I've been saying, why don't we get the veterans who are, pay the veterans and do two things. One is be the school guards, guard every school entrance in America.
Yes.
So you can't get in. You don't have a gun-free zone. Psychopaths apply here. And why don't we have them be our election monitors? Have the veterans go in and be paid, be trained to be our election monitors. These I think are the kinds of things we could do that we're going to need to do something, because if the Democrats can this easily engage in voter fraud and brag about it, which they do, which is astounding to me, we're going to have to do something very serious in order to harden and improve the voting system. And then the other thing that developed on Friday, just to continue, not only was it these 13 ridiculous indictments by Mueller and QAnon signaling that we've got a major voting scandal coming forward from the Department of Homeland Security reporting on the Democrats' massive voting fraud, millions of illegals voting, destroying ballots that were duly cast. Then we also found out that on Friday in the school shooting, the FBI had been warned any number of times, that this specific intelligence, this kid is going to be a shooter. And they were informed of his social media postings and, guns and threats. And the FBI did absolutely nothing. They were too busy hunting Russian collusion to, be bothered with a school shooter who in fact killed 17 innocent school children while they were hunting 13 loony Russians. Yeah, that was the big report of the whole FBI on Friday, embarrassed. And I think Christopher Wray ought to resign. I think he's completely incompetent. It's a complete failure of the FBI to follow up on legitimate and specific intelligence that could have saved the lives of those kids.
And what they're doing is the corporate media are now, instead of just asking one of those questions, I mean, don't they have children too? Or do they all go to private schools, have to worry about that? But they're trying now to use this as yet again another example of revamping and changing somehow gun laws. Okay,
right,
fine.
Of course.
And
we immediately roll out the gun law lobby, and they all say, let's, look, all the work I did, and I had top secret clearance with the State Department in the 80s. I was working with terrorists and bad guys, how to solve problems. You get a gun-free zone, you get a school where the entrance is not protected, where there's no armed guard there. A psychopath says, please attack here. Please attack here. It's the kind of thing I tried to, I've been so upset about the Catholic Church. I was raised a Catholic, and this pedophilia scandal has just, torn me apart. In Rome, I would talk to the Vatican. I'd say, don't you guys realize you advertise the priesthood as you can't get married. You're going to have trusted confidential sessions with young kids, boys and girls, in private setting. And you're going to be operating as, a representative of the church, so you have this authority. I'd say, that says pedophiles apply here.
Right.
Any pedophile in America who says that's the job description says, I'm in. The same thing with a gun-free zone in a school. Say, hey, this is my time. Why would I bother with a school that's protected?
But there's also there's another aspect to this as well, is that there is a tragedy, and whenever I try or anybody tries to address this, we're told, not now. Well, you're talking about it. Well, we're different. Number one, you're by virtue of, now I don't want there to be any kind of law that would mandate this, but it would seem to me that everybody agree, all of the newspaper and television, listen to me, the buggy whip and spittoon manufacturers along with the newspaper. But I think somebody would say, the next person who does this, we're not going to give his name out. Why must we know Nicholas Cruz? Why do we take somebody who's, let's say, is a zero, somebody who's got mental problems, which we'll get to in a moment, and show them and provide the template? This is what happens. You will be forever listed in the mass shooting Hall of Fame. You will get your moment of glory. You will do that. That's number one. Number two, they never discuss the fact that there's a mental illness problem here. And we're not trying to demonize mentally ill because everybody in their family knows one. 99.9% of everybody, including schizophrenics, don't do this. And the third part about it is that there always seems to be at least the threshold suspicion of perhaps maybe these individuals were on and using psychotropic medication and psych meds, which list in their own literature, not mine, not yours, that oftentimes side effects, or I argue effects, are violence, homicide, suicide, and the like. So you've got you've got the stranglehold from Big Pharma that says, no, talk about the magazine capacity, what they did to purchase it, mention gun shows. Don't ever talk about anything that could be a contributing factor other than that which we have paid you, Congress, to address.
Well, see, the other part that QAnon has been addressing has been this MKUltra program of the CIA, which goes back to the 50s. It was a drug program. They were using LSD and other drugs to try to mind control, and it looks like it really never quit. It's still operative, just like you asked about the mainstream media, Operation Mockingbird with the CIA,
yes. The 50s,
paying
yes.
the media, and Q has been attacking not only Operation MKUltra and the CIA, but also, big pharmacy, big farm, because the big pharmacy is producing these drugs, which they could have drugs that could cure illnesses that they don't produce, producing drugs that prolong the illness where they make a lot of money. And then the MKUltra program, in a sense, went mainstream with the drugging of society. I mean, why are we giving all these kids in school Ritalin? You say you're hyperactive. Well, that may be the brightest kid in the class. And you want to dumb them down to sit in a row in a school, which was no different than 1824, sitting in the rules, watching the teacher scratch chalk on a blackboard.
Q brings something up. Dr. Corsi, there's something that is a defense that people inadvertently benefit from, and that's where something seems so, because they're so unbelievably nescient as to the goings-on of the world, that this is new to them, and they think, oh my God, you're some kind of a tinfoil hat. You're a lunatic. What, MKUltra? What is this, Lawrence Harvey, the Manchurian candidate? Yes, because if you can think it, and Hollywood can think it, it's already 50 years old. But he brings up this this William Cooper passage, and he talks about this. This is from the 1991 book, Behold the Pale Horse. The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster, to foster a feeling of insecurity, which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms. Using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion, the CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway and so far is working perfectly. The middle class is begging the government to do away with the Second Amendment. Now, without endorsing this, without saying this is what happened or this is what Q was saying, there is a way of looking at this that says, in addition to the arsenal of understanding, throw these arrows in your quiver. Look at what's going on. Ask, look beyond bump stocks and gun shows and the usual drivel. It's far more complicated than this. And thank God for Q. Thank God for at least focusing on that which I and many, many others have been advocating for years.
Well, I've got a copy of Bill Cooper's book from 1991, The Behold a Pale Horse. I've had it for years. And he was a former naval intelligence briefing officer who I believe was, killed in a set-up killing. And it was he was brilliant on several topics, including 9/11, including the Kennedy assassination. He raised questions that were compelling, and Q responded to that, to an anonymous posting that section of Bill Cooper's books, big, and It is big because almost every one of these shooters you deal with is on some form of, they're in some form of analysis with a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they're being given these very powerful psychoactive drugs, which is, don't cure the person. A psychiatrist, psychologist, write them a prescription, give them some drugs. It's the George Orwell society, the Brave New World. Here's some soma. Take some soma. Go to sleep. You don't have to struggle. You're going to just go to sleep on the drugs. Well, these psychoactive drugs in teenagers produce suicidal and homicidal thoughts. And so you're basically taking a kid who's got psychological problems, a mother died, or all these different issues, not particularly socially adapted. These kids are problematic to begin with. Then you give them all these drugs, and the kid starts acting up and warning everybody he's going to commit a kill kids. The neighbors, everybody calls the police. The police come over 39 times to talk to this kid. The FBI is aware of him. The FBI does nothing. And the FBI has to admit that they completely dropped the ball on specific intelligence. Well, it isn't that they dropped the ball on specific intelligence. It's that the FBI, the CIA, the entire deep state is committed to these school killings because it is and has been a methodology of the deep state to disarm the population. If they can convince people to give up their guns, then, again, they've achieved one of the major purposes of gaining control, as Hillary Clinton, I believe, wanted to do, and Barack Obama wanted to do, where social media is controlled. All that we're finding out about the election fraud, none of this, Christopher Steele, the fusion GPS, the violations of national security law to do electronic surveillance of Donald Trump's campaign into the White House for 6 months, electronic surveillance, massive surveillance of the population. None of this would have come out if Hillary had won. None of it would have come out.
And we're also going to find out more. We're going to probably have more of an incentive to fix these porous election laws. By the way, you and I have been cited by these right-wing news watchers. This where we've been, and it's like I want to thank them. Make sure they spell the name correctly, because I've never understood how the best way to marginalize someone is ignore them. But when you call attention to something, I have been saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the very thing that virtually every government wants to do is to disable the public's ability to complain and to voice objection. But they also want to disarm and confiscate. And the Second Amendment is this pesky, horrible thing, inartfully drawn, of course, terribly written, weirdly phrased. But they have been trying forever to ask the question, why do you need a gun of this size to hunt ducks or to plink cans off of the... Why do you need this to hunt, to camp? And the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting and camping. That's the direction. They're actually handed almost the script to read. And when you come along and say, this is about the abrogation of the Second Amendment, that is precisely what this is about.
Right. And the point is that, the deep state is, we're trying to fight it here. You talk about David Brock and Media Matters and these other organizations, Soros-funded, leftist-funded, and they do everything they can. They call up Fox News and say, don't have Corsi on, or we'll go after your advertisers. And and then they get the social media giants, which I think are going to have to be broken up by the FTC. And we're going to have, and I've been advocating this hashtag Internet Bill of Rights, so that we get an Internet Bill of Rights applied. The Bill of Rights applied to the Internet, because the Internet giants, Soros concocts this crafty phrase, net neutrality, which is deceptive. It means that only the Internet service providers, the AT&Ts and the Verizons and the Comcasts, have to be fair to everybody. The giants, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name them, they can censor to their heart's delight. saying we're private, we can do whatever we want.
This is the most important thing. When you I've talked about net neutrality. You want to now treat this as a utility, which is subject to licensing, and everybody says no because they've been told this. Dr. Corsi, this is their story. If I'm watching Game of Thrones or whatever it is, and all of a sudden my speed just slows down, I'm saying, wait a minute, that's not fair. Now, I don't know about you, but this is the most specious argument. Imagine, if what do you think people are going to do if all of a sudden one ISP or one provider slows down? They're going to go elsewhere. That's not the argument. The thing they're trying to do is they say the First Amendment applies only to the federal government, state government. And I submit and others submit that when you represent 90% of the news stories, if you can basically shelve, you are a utility. You are an extension of the government. You are, through an entanglement argument, you are the government. You should fall under the rubric and the protections of the First Amendment. You are. That's what we're saying.
If you're going to use broadband to run the internet, then we have to have an Internet Bill of Rights. You've got to have First Amendment protection so that you're not going to be censored because you're saying something that politically the people who run Google don't like. And Google doesn't like anything conservative. They don't like anything libertarian. They're over the cliff in this hard left agenda. And the hard left is intolerant. It doesn't want to hear any criticism. It wants to imprison and mind control and thought reform. It's a cultural revolution is what it is, like in the Cultural Revolution in China. But what we have to do is we have to say the internet's got to be respectful of the rights we have, including the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. All this NSA surveillance, which we're going to find out, by the way, was a crime that Hillary Clinton, concocted this whole idea of the Russian surveillance, Russian collusion, and you've got the FBI with the Fusion GPS, lying dossier Christopher Steele makes up, supplied by information by Sidney Blumenthal. They run into a FISA court, and they get approval to have electronic surveillance of Carter Page, who happens to be a CIA, an FBI informant double agent who participated in 2 earlier Russian stings.
Oh, he said it wasn't him. He said, oh, no. Or UCE1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not him. Oh, not me.
No. Let me go back and ask you something.
And he goes in and he talks to people. Now you become collateral. You're under electronic surveillance. And at the White House, they unmask your name. You're no longer person X, person Y. You're named, and that is released to the press. That was concocted by Barack Obama together with Valerie Jarrett and Susan Rice. And what's her name? The one who was UN ambassador, the third one.
Samantha Power.
Samantha Power, all 3 of whom were key agents
the harpies.
Leaking to the press this classified information, this Fourth Amendment protected information that was gleaned from the electronic surveillance.
And let me also, 2 things. Number 1, Samantha Power's husband, Cass Sunstein, who was Barack Obama's regulation czar or something, advocated this cognitive infiltration of the internet, where the government would watch to see who's spreading lies about climate change and conspiracy theories. This is Cass Sunstein. This also believes animals should have the same rights as humans. You can't write this stuff. But I got to ask you a question. Do you think, I don't see you on Fox? You mentioned that. Are you telling me that why would somebody not want the inimitable, the ineffable Dr. Jerome Corsi on this bastion of conservative platforming? Pray tell why, sir?
Well, after I wrote Abomination and then I attacked Obama and the birth certificate, the Media Matters campaign and Soros-funded organizations said, of course, I have to become now a conspiracy theorist and a kook and marginalized. And everybody knows there was a birth certificate. Didn't Obama show? Well, he showed, a computer printed of his birth certificate, which, et cetera. But they ran a campaign so that if I show up on Fox, Fox gets bombarded with, you can't have Corsi on, you can't do this, we'll attack your advertisers.
But they're Fox. Aren't they supposed to say, no, have you not noticed what we do? Our audience wants this. I'm sorry.
Fox increasingly, under the Obama administration, went centrist, more mainstream.
You know why also?
Look at Shep
deal.
Smith. Look at Shep Smith.
Oh.
It was over that Sky deal. I mean, they have all these leftist commentators anymore. I mean, millions of people don't watch Fox anymore because they can't stand the fair and balanced has become dominated, so they're afraid to say anything which offends the hard left.
But this is one, they're making a big deal. Drudge was, bless her heart. Look, a gig's a gig. But when Laura Ingraham says, boy, I sure incurred the wrath of LeBron James, who cares? That's not even interesting. We're talking about something. This is why what we're doing is going to explode. Let me tell you something. Mark my words. One day they're going to be banging your door down to say, Corsi, can you do this? Can you do this for, oh, no, you don't want me to do it. No, I want that, and by the way, it's not tinfoil hat. How dare you? It's aluminum foil. We haven't worn tin in years. Give me the program. But this was this was the thing. I want to go back for just a second. I'll never understand this. When you go to a job, any job, or they'll say, all right, Dr. Corsi, would you go see Marge in HR and she'll sign you up for your paycheck? Okay. And they walk and say, Dr. Corsi, can you please give us a driver's license for this form or a birth certificate or what was that? No. Can I send you a 4th generation photocopy of a congratulations article congratulating my parents from the Honolulu Picayune in 19... What? Listen, Corsi, maybe you didn't understand me. I want a driver's license. I want this or birth certificate. Okay, can I give you a short form? A what? I've been doing HR for 20 years. What the hell's a short form? Do you or do you not have? Now, he wanted people to say, I don't have one of these things. I don't have. I'm jumping through hoops, driving you nuts, telling you I'm not going to get. And then they finally say, okay, here it is. Then somebody, I forget who it was, who does graphics, one day says, I looked at this thing and I don't think they really meant, this is a PDF or Photoshop or what the hell is this thing? I mean, they want you to challenge it because they somehow made this connection that if you were to question the authenticity and the provenance of a president pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution, you're a racist. That's the biggest story there is. Herbert Hoover, under that 14-year requirement or whatever, they said, we don't even know whether you were in this country long enough. No problem. John McCain, Panama Canal, doesn't matter. George Romney was born in Chihuahua, Mexico, and there's some Mormon thing. It's been done historically. It's not racist. And then you come along, and you barely... I mean, it's... I can't imagine why that wouldn't be the most important issue, bar none. But no.
Well, see, but again, look here, the mainstream media, which demonized me on that, and if you ever said anything about Obama, immediately you were racist, immediately you were off of Fox, immediately you were banned, okay? But to say something good about Donald Trump, you'll get nowhere. Now, again, because the mainstream media said the most horrendous things about Donald Trump, made up the most outrageous lies, propagated them through the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and that's supposed to be acceptable. This hypocrisy, double standard, and it's what Americans, I think, are waking up to. This is where QAnonymous is driving home the Great Awakening, because people are saying they're tired of this lying, duplicitous, one-way state that does nothing. Lies, the Democrats lie, abandoned the DACA, and want the Spanish in here for the illegal votes. This is the issue, the polarization of this country, and the fact that if you're conservative or libertarian, you're going to be marginalized. And if you're Obama hid the pictures where he was meeting with the leaders of the Black Muslim movement. 1995, he went on the Million Man March with Louis Farrakhan, who is with a Reverend Wright. He lied about it. He said, "No, he tried to deny going on that. He tried to deny having anything to do with black Muslims." A kid whose name was Barry Sortoro, who attended mosque in Indonesia as a child, who goes to Cairo as president and says, "I've experienced Islam on 3 continents," whose CIA director, probably a CIA handler, speaks Arabic, learned it with the State Department in the Middle East, probably, I believe, converted to Islam.
And whose records, Occidental this, maybe, I don't know, don't ask. And then you have Frank Marshall, don't bring that up. And don't bring up that, don't. And it's almost like saying, this is true. You know it. Listen, We got the last laugh on him with that official portrait. We got the last laugh that will forever. When I thought that, I said, "This is a joke. What is this, wallpaper? What is this? This is a joke, right? This is a joke."
It is pathetic. I mean, and it was Bathhouse Berry's last attack on the American system, his last ridicule.
Bathhouse Berry. What does that mean?
Oh, of course. I mean, I studied all this. Look, in Chicago, Barack Obama was widely known as Bathhouse Berry for being homosexual and attending all the bathhouses. It was widely known, common knowledge. I wrote about it and again got ridiculed on it. Bathhouse Berry.